Maintaining soil fertility is one of the most important aspects of forage and pasture management. Plants need macro and micronutrients for growth, and the soil pH has to be in the right range for optimal forage growth. Dr. Dirk Phillip from the University of Arkansas explains why.
So maintaining soil fertility is important from a forage production standpoint, and therefore from a return standpoint, economic return standpoint, from a cattle production. And now in fall, taking soil sample is important because when you have to apply lime, for example, a lime takes a relatively long time to become effective, up to 6 months or even longer. You can apply the lime now in that period where not much is actually happening growth-wise, and then in spring you have corrected your pH and can start out into the new growing season. And the same is with other nutrients. Obviously, if there's no need for nitrogen, if you have winter annual forages, you do not have to apply that, obviously, but you can apply phosphorus and potassium if needed, and for the next growing season. I'm gonna go over some equipment you need for taking the soil samples. Let me start out with a very important thing, namely that at the county extension office you get those soil boxes, and you fill your soil sample into those boxes and you get the analysis back for free, right? So I repeat that, you get that for free, so there's actually no excuse not to take soil samples because you do not have to pay for it. You do not have to turn it into a commercial lab and pay for it. You get that analysis back for free from the county extension service. For taking soil samples, you should take it up to a depth of about 6 inches, because that is the surface area of the soil up to down to 6 inches in which most of the nutrient uptake takes place. And normally you would take the soil samples with a soil probe, which I show here. You can obtain that from a website or somewhere in a place where you can get that kind of equipment. And in this case it's attached to a sliding hammer, and I'm going to show that later how that's going to work actually in the field, how you take soil samples and you take the sample up to a depth of 6 inches. Another piece of equipment you can use is actually a spade. The only thing is you have to dig a little hole into the ground and take the samples up to 6 inches, and you have to stay consistent with it.
Dirk Phillip shows the process of taking soil samples with the equipment described.
And you just set it down on the ground here. Make sure you just push away the forage a little bit. Right on the ground, and you hammer it in. 6 inches down. Take it carefully out of the ground. You have to wiggle a little bit. And just put it into the bucket. So whenever you take soil samples from your pasture, it is very important to take a representative sample. That means you have to take several subsamples for each pasture or paddock you like to sample, at least 15 to 20 subsamples to get a good sample.
Designate the area from which you want to take samples and walk in a zigzag line until you've collected at least 15 to 20 subsamples. This will give you a good representative overall sample. As soil is inherently highly variable, anything below 15 subsamples will very likely result in an inaccurate prediction of your soil quality and fertilizer needs. It is important to consider the presence of areas with high nutrient concentration.
Pasture, like in the background, you have the shade area. Around those areas, obviously, there's a high concentration of certain nutrients, like in this case, for example, phosphorus or so. And whenever you sample a pasture, although that is probably an extreme example, you have differences in nutrient content across the pasture, like around those shaded areas, for example, around watering devices, around the gates. And those areas should be sampled separately, or being taken out of that sampling altogether, or being mixed thoroughly into that entire overall representative sample, so you get a good overall sample to turn into the soil lab.
Once you have mixed all the subsamples, the sample is ready to be placed in the soil box.
As I said, those are about, now in this bucket I have about 17 subsamples, and once I'm done with here, they need to be filled into that soil box. So the soil box you get provided at the extension office, you need to fold that to put your soil samples in here like this. And obviously there are other things you need to write down, and it's written on the side of the box what kind of sample ID, what it is, your name and address and so forth. And I would suggest the help you with that from the county extension office, because there's a certain way how to fill out that information, and it makes it much easier for the soil lab in Marianne if you do it the way they want to have it. And then obviously then have to write down for what that forage that is, or what that area is, and so forth. So you take that soil sample, you mix soil sample, and just fill it in here. Almost full, it doesn't have to be entirely full, but so they have a good sample to work with. And then you close the box and you're ready to drop it off. Thank you very much for watching this video. This is a brief overview of how to take your soil samples. And we're going to put in some addresses on the screen below about fact sheets we have at the extension office available, downloadable from the internet, where you can learn more about how to interpret the soil sample results. Thank you for watching.